I believe something similar when you talk about destiny and how things shape your life as far as looking back on certain mistakes. Mm-hmm. So certain things you look, when they happen, they feel like a mistake.
Yep.
But as I've gotten older, I realized that some of those things were really just lessons.
Mm-hmm. You know, learn from them.
Yeah. They weren't necessarily as big a mistake as you thought they were at the time. Mm-hmm. They really, and obviously it depends on how you handle them. But that's interesting. Just how life does take those twists and turns.
It's weird.
And you just never know what's around the corner.
Bam! Hey, Underdogs, it's Jayson Waller, host of the True Underdog Podcast. Welcome to another episode of True Underdog Classic, where I feature some of my favorite conversations from back in the day. Today, I'm featuring my interview with Barry Sanders, one of my favorite football players as a kid. He's an absolute legend. During his 10-year football career, he won the Heisman and was inducted to the Hall of Fame. He is definitely the king of the Lions. Now, you hear a lot of successful people who are constantly setting goals for themselves. Their minds are set on the future, not Barry. Barry's philosophy has always been stay in the moment. He knew that the best way to not only be successful, but savor his success is to take things one step at a time. This interview covers everything from Barry's childhood love of football to the mindset that drove his career. You don't want to miss this episode of True Underdog Classic. Barry Sanders, staying in the moment. How are you doing, Barry?
I'm doing great, man. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
And you know what? We're here in Detroit, Michigan area, right? You're still here where you got drafted. You're still living here in the community. I want the listeners and followers, for those that don't watch football, to understand how big of an icon you are in this state and for this team. I mean, me being a diehard Lions fan my entire life, and I know a lot of the people here that are filming this show with us, they're huge fans. They had you sign in stuff before we got on here, and you've been out of the game for over 20 years. And when you got drafted by the Detroit Lions, you were the best running back in college. You broke all the records for rushing yards and touchdowns. You get drafted, the number 2 pick. You remember who the number 1 pick was?
Yeah, I remember the number 1 pick.
That?
Yeah, the number 1 pick that year was Troy Aikman.
That's right. And
I was actually number 3.
Oh, you were number 3.
I was number 3.
That's right.
Yeah,
So it's my fault. You were number 3.
But I'll take 2 though. I'll take number 2.
You know why I said
number 2
that,
money?
though?
I'll take number 2 money.
Number 2 money. They owe you that money. Tony Mandrich was number 2.
Right.
And that didn't last long. That's what I meant. So you were
right.
It was Troy Aikman, then it was Tony Mandrich, then it was you. And you came into the game and you were rookie of the year, your rookie year. You broke 1,000 yards. You almost won the rushing title. And you were such an icon here in Detroit. And the way you carried yourself on and off the field, I want people to understand that not only did you break records, but who you are as an individual in the community, as an adult post-football, and what it was like growing up. So let's start in your family life growing up. You're one of 11, is that correct?
I'm one of 11.
Okay.
There were 3 boys, 8 girls.
Oh, wow.
I'm right there in the middle on number 7.
Okay.
And grew up in Wichita, Kansas.
Yep.
And one small thing I'll say about it, just to give you an idea of how I was raised. I was raised to say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir. That's the way I approached any adult. Yeah. Is what I was taught to address any adult.
Right.
And so just things like that. Dad was very, very firm.
Yep.
And hardworking, and mom was a little more, two very different personalities. Mom was much more laid back, didn't say a whole lot, unless she was maybe griping out dad or something like that, but
we've all been there.
Right. Yeah. But I would say a pretty solid, stable foundation is one that I was fortunate enough to come from.
You had great parents. Your dad worked hard. Your mom was laid back. I mean, you're one of 11. You're right in the middle, lucky 7. What was it like? I know your dad was in the roofing business, correct? What was it like for you to want to do things in Wichita, Kansas? That's a small town, right? I mean, it's not that big, right? And to want to play football and to do things, but being part of a big family, were there some struggles? Were there other sports you wanted to play? Were there things sometimes that held you back from doing the things you need to do as a kid because you were helping, with your family?
Well, for me, I wouldn't say there were really things that held me back. I mean, sports-wise, activity-wise, whatever could get me out of the house, doing something productive, then my parents were all for it. So I was always outside running, playing, jumping, playing with friends. And from a pretty early age, I was playing sports, basketball and track and football.
I saw you really liked basketball, but your dad wanted you to play football?
Well, no, I mean, he knew I was a football player. I guess I thought I was a hooper, you know.
Thought you were like Isaiah Thomas.
I thought I was a hooper.
Yeah, okay.
But he knew I was a football player. And so I think that was more so it. But I played all those, you know, growing up and you know, so yeah, I was always very active as far as that, you know, and really, I started playing organized football when I was 9 years old. Mm-hmm. But I was an avid follower of college.
How good were you
high
at 9?
School? And
were you one of the best players on the team at 9?
My first year, I believe I was.
Okay.
My first year, I was. It's funny because my first game ever, I was playing with a team called the Beach Red Barons, and I'm pretty sure the first game I played in some Chuck Taylors.
Oh, wow.
Right?
That's hard to run out there in Chuck Taylors.
I played in some Chuck Taylors. So I had a great game, a couple touchdowns or whatever, some good tackles. And so I was able to convince my dad after that to go and buy me some cleats. After they were actually some Juice Mobiles.
Juice Mobiles.
My spot built, you know, and obviously they were named after OJ.
Yep.
The Juice, you know, who
another great running back.
He was amazingly popular in the 70s, what have you. So yeah. So I think that first year I had a really good year, and then you know, years following that it was kind of some really good years, some not so good years, but the first year was very good.
You competed, I would assume, sometimes with your brothers to see who would be more athletic. I'm sure you played some sports against them. Were you the fastest?
Oh, no. Well, I have a brother. I have 2 older brothers. Mm-hmm. Byron is just a year older, mm-hmm. right? But growing up, he looked like he was like 5 or 6 years older than me. And then my oldest brother, Boyd, is like 8 years older. So Byron and I were always together. I was always sort of following him around the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. You know, and whatever he did, that's what I did, you know, so oftentimes that involved playing football with the older boys, you know, and so that's really, that was really sort of my first taste of playing football, just, you know, being there in whatever vacant lot we found or someone's yard, and just being with the older boys, trying to fit in with them basically. But as far as the fastest, no, I mean, you know, obviously, at that age, you know, a 2 or 3 years difference is very obvious and makes a big difference. So no, I was just one of the younger kids trying to follow the older boys.
So you think at that age, and I like to reemphasize this on the show all the time. A lot of the listeners, they get stuck in spots or they feel like, oh, I don't have talent or I don't have the skill set. And, you know, here you are. You've got 2 older brothers. You join a team and you're lights out. You're great your first game. But I asked, are you a little faster than your brother's? Like, no, probably not. You're young. But you had this competitive advantage and you had this hunger, obviously, to play. And I'm sure your brothers had that as well. But when you went out on that football field, you did good your first year. Point to that is you didn't know you were going to be that good. And you went out there. Is it a competitive insight that you have? Was it natural talent? What do you think really gave you an edge when you were on that first year, even at 9, to be different than some of the other kids?
Well, I had a passion and a love for the
passion.
Game.
Yeah.
And you couldn't keep me away from the game. I mean, I was always watching it, and I was always playing it.
Yep.
Whether at recess or after school or at practice.
You couldn't get enough, right?
I could not, or if I wasn't doing that, I was playing my electric football game.
Okay.
You know, so
yeah. Is that what the little things that move around?
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely,
I remember that. Yeah.
Absolutely. That was my sort of video game or Madden football. But yeah, that was, you know, so the game, it was something about the game that just kind of took a hold of me.
It was a why. You were passionate about it. It was something that you hooked on.
I just loved it. Yeah. And I have to give Dad credit. I mean, he was an avid football fan.
Yep.
You know, and you just mentioned the fact that I'm one of 11. Well, he's just a working guy. He had season tickets to Oklahoma Sooner football, mm-hmm. you know, and he always tells a story that in the early 70s, you know, whenever they raised the tickets and, you know, he had one too many kids, he had to give up his season tickets, but he was a serious fan. And so that's where a lot of it comes from. And so, yeah, I mean, I couldn't get enough of it. I loved the Raiders. That was my favorite NFL team, but
everybody liked the silver and black when they were young.
Oh yeah.
It was the cool uniform.
I guess, yeah. And plus they were always winning back then.
Yeah, they had good teams back then.
They were always winning. But whether it was high school ball or college ball or pro
like
ball, I just loved it. I just loved it.
You came into high school and you played, and a lot of people know your story. You came in, I think, as a cornerback starting out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then converted over to running back. Was that was that coach there in high school one of the mentors for you to really take things to the next level? Who were some of your mentors along the way? Was it high school? Was it, I know your dad was, but was it high school? Was it college? Who kind of helped mold the direction you ended up going?
Yeah, I would say high school coach. My junior year, you as you mentioned, I was still playing defensive back, which I mean, for me, I just loved playing the game.
Yeah.
Right. So I was obviously still growing into myself, and coming into my own, I guess you could say. And so I loved playing the game. My junior year, I was starting defensive back. My brother was a starting running back. And after my junior year, the longtime coach retires and goes to athletic director, hires the new coach. And the new coach, he comes in and just with a completely different mindset and attitude. Just a fun-loving guy, a lot of quirky sayings. It's great to be young, alive, and a Redskin. That was our mascot. I know that's controversial. It's sort of controversial now, but he just had a whole different philosophy, and so he's the one that after the fourth game of my senior year said, no, I think we're gonna make Sanders a running back. I think it was actually the third game, but he was like, yeah, we're gonna make Sanders a running back. He's an okay defensive back, but I think he's put on earth to be a running back. And that's
your senior year.
That's my senior year.
Were you already getting looks your junior year as a corner?
I wasn't getting any looks. I thought I was a pretty good defensive back, honestly. But
I would have loved to seen you pick one off and do a little shift to take it to the house.
No, I love the contact.
Yep.
And I loved just everything about being a corner. And like for a small guy, relatively small kid, I mean, that was a good place to be if you were athletic.
Yeah.
And I was sort of the kick returner type guy, but Coach Burkholder came in and
put you in there
and put me at running back, and really the rest is history. But he's a guy. Actually, he's a friend to this day. I mean, we still talk.
So cool.
And get together and things like that. He loved being around kids. Mm-hmm. You knew that was where he really wanted to be. It wasn't a chore. He loved football.
Yep. He was passionate like you were.
That's what he was.
He shared the passion.
That's what he was. He was passionate about it. He had been around some great players because he had coached at junior college in Kansas, and he had been around Mike Rozier and Ron Springs and a couple guys like that. And so for me, that was very fascinating. And another thing he would do the day of the game, he would show these videos of great running backs that had played in the Big 8 conference. Mm-hmm. Now it's the Big 12.
Right.
And one of those running backs was Billy Sims.
Yep.
Right. And all those great Oklahoma Sooner running backs.
And your dad loves Billy Sims, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Billy Sims, Barry Switzer, anything Oklahoma Sooners. But he would show us those highlights day of the game. And it was just great inspiration for me as an aspiring running back. To see that footage, and it was just more sort of excitement, and just something I always remember to get hyped up for the high school games.
One thing that you just shared here, and I talk about this all the time, is we hit pivotal points in our life where I believe there's no such thing as a wrong decision. That's what I always tell people. Look, whatever decision, when you come to a crossroad, whatever you decide, it's the right decision as long as you're all in on it. You can't look backwards. Once you look backwards, now it's the wrong decision. You're second guessing it. But people we meet, relationships we have, different things can change our entire life. Imagine if he didn't make you the running back. Think about,
right.
He saw something. Let's put him at running back. And it did. And the rest is history. And there's always different pivotal moments. And I'm sure there's games and then times in college that every step we make, every day that we get up and we take part in that day, those decisions affect the rest of our life. Now, we don't want to scare ourselves and go, everything I do is going to change everything, but it really does. People we meet, relationships, everything changes everything for your whole path that God has for you. If that's what you believe, like that is your path and you have to make those decisions. So what's really cool is here you are. I go back to in my business, like, oh, there was this pivotal moment when I met this guy and did this, or, oh, I decided to take a chance on that. Where if I didn't, where would I be today? That's a spot right there that at least I'm seeing as a fan and doing this interview is like, look, if he didn't make you the running back, what then? You said you were getting no looks. You became the running back and off to the races.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I was concerned really going into my senior year because probably around my junior year or into my sophomore year, like the light bulb went off for me that actually, eventually you're going to like graduate and what do you want to do? Well, for me, the answer was I'd love to go to college and play college football. Before then, I just, I wasn't serious about school, and I guess I was just sort of punching the clock every day, I guess you could say. But I really remember just saying, oh, wow. And then a few of my buddies were getting looks from colleges. In fact, there was a kid, big kid that I played high school with named Joel Fry, who had signed with Oklahoma State. He was a lineman. He signed with Oklahoma State his junior year. And so they were really coming to scout Joel when they saw me playing, and so, but point is, so I had that thought like, I really want to go to college and play college football, but I'm getting no looks from anywhere. I don't know what I'm going to do, and that's when, around the same time, Coach Burkholder comes in, and that sort of thing. So yeah, but
I believe
it
that,
is
that horse
how
came by for you to be running back and you jumped on it and made the best of it.
And like you were saying in your previous statement, I believe something similar when you talk about, destiny and how things shape your life as far as looking back on certain mistakes. So certain things you look, when they happen, they feel like a mistake.
Yep.
But as I've gotten older, I realized that some of those things were really just lessons.
You learn from them.
Yeah. They weren't necessarily as big a mistake as you thought they were at the time. They really, and obviously it depends on how you handle them, right, and how you go forward with them or whatever. But that's interesting. Just how life does take those twists and turns. It's weird. And you just never know what's around the corner.
And you don't know what relationship or what decision is going to change everything.
Absolutely.
So you get in
because I have to say this, the previous coach that had retired, he was adamant that I was not going to be a running back. He was adamant in that sense. And really the new coach told me that, right? He told me that after the fact, because the old coach had retired and become AD and hired him. And he was like, yeah, he was never going to play you at running back. He told me that he just didn't think you had the toughness, and he had grown up playing the game and coaching the game a certain way. Right. And so, and obviously my frame and whatever.
You were small. You were 5'8", still 5'8".
Yeah. Well, I probably wasn't even 5'8" at that time, but yeah. So I just didn't look like his view of a running back. Right. So you're right. I am very fortunate that the new coach came in and he could see it.
It's great that sometimes people around us can see things that other people are missing to give us that opportunity.
Absolutely.
So when you got college offers, I've seen a lot of the documentaries and the Football Life, which is that was one of my favorites, not only because I'm a huge fan, but the whole story of you and getting to where you got in the NFL. And you're one of the most humble human beings I've ever met. I've met a lot of folks. You're very humble. You're never cocky or arrogant. Your professionalism and the way you carry yourself is top notch. I've never met anyone that is like that. So take that as a compliment because the world lacks that, including me. I'm always like, man, I wish I was as polite or kind as Barry is to people all the time. I got to teach my kids. No, I promise. I got to teach my kids that. But one thing, when you're very humble like that and you're not an outgoing, hey, what about me type person, you almost need these little roadmaps that are getting you to where you're going because you're not going to be out there screaming and taking what you want, which is what most people do. You had to follow that destiny with certain relationships that you've made or that saw things in you that others might not have that have accelerated your path. Let's go to when you were getting recruited. What were the top 3 schools that offered you a scholarship or to bring you on for football?
Well, the schools that had offered me was Oklahoma State, Tulsa, and Iowa State.
Yeah.
Those are the schools. But when you talk about humility, I don't know, maybe how often have you been to Kansas? I think you said you've never been there.
Never been to Kansas.
Maybe you
I gotta go.
Kansas
I'll go with you.
Some folks that have a little humility, but but no, you know what? I think for me, in my mind, I was always that kid who was always sort of trying to get there, and I was always not big enough or fast enough or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And so I think I always play with that chip on my shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And that really heavily influenced me. I think also I probably took on more of my mother's personality, because my dad, if you ever had been around him, he's not what you would call humble.
Right.
And he loved interviews. He loved
I loved his interviews. Every time he spoke, I loved it. It was great.
And probably he's one who would often keep one humble as well. But I think I take on my mom's personality as far as that. But for me, it was just all about always about playing the game and trying to be great at it. And really, trying to be great at whatever level I was. In high school, I wanted to be a good high school player.
Yeah.
And same in college. I was never. I think I could say I was never too far ahead of myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's, again, because of, especially in the early days, it was so hard really to get any traction,
Mm-hmm.
and I just loved playing the game and being on the field. But to answer your question, the three colleges were Oklahoma State, Tulsa, and Iowa State. I have to say this, though. I had pretty much, in my mind, resigned to the fact that I wasn't going to go to school in Kansas, because they had horrible football programs.
Mm-hmm.
K-State, KU, and Wichita State were the three major schools as far as football. And so outside of Kansas, those were the schools that offered me, and those were the recruiting trips that I took.
And your dad wanted you to go to Oklahoma, and you took Oklahoma State. Did it hurt his feelings?
Well, he was
bothered?
He was a big Oklahoma Sooner fan. I didn't get recruited by University of Oklahoma.
Right.
So what happened is one of the coaches, the coach at Tulsa,
mm-hmm.
had convinced my dad that I would come in and play early, right? Which he was probably right. I probably would have. And if you remember, well, you weren't around. You're young. You're a lot younger. You're a lot younger than me. But
I'm 40. I remember some.
But if you think about
Thurman
late
Thomas was
70s, 80s football,
yeah,
teams would stockpile players because there was unlimited scholarships.
You're right.
So you look at the Oklahoma Sooner bench and you see 10 running backs, and a lot of times it was almost like an unwritten rule. The certain coaches would recruit certain players just so another school didn't get them.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
They would never see the field.
So they would recruit them and they never see the field. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so the same thing. It was the same case at Oklahoma State. We had a ton of running backs, and they were all from places where you would think, okay, this is where football players come from. So growing up in Kansas, you're almost conditioned to believe, okay, well, the real ball players come from Oklahoma. They come from Texas.
Mm-hmm.
We had a whole list of guys from Oklahoma and Texas. And,
on that team was Thurman Thomas.
And obviously Thurman Thomas as well, right?
Yeah.
So my dad was like, you don't want to go there with all those guys. You'll never see the field. But in this, also with that, obviously, like I mentioned before, the coach at Tulsa had convinced him, he'll come in and be an immediate starter. So I understand, why my dad was very, very apprehensive. And, he had probably not a great reaction to me signing with Oklahoma State, and it was one of those days that I look back on and was like, wow, that was difficult, because when it was
a hard moment.
Yeah. Well, the coach came from Oklahoma State the morning of signing day, morning before school. And he just wanted to, say hi to everyone and congratulate me on signing with Oklahoma State. And Dad wouldn't even shake his hand. Dad wouldn't shake his hand. He walked through the living room. Coach tried to greet him, wouldn't say anything to him. Went to the front door, and as he was leaving, he said, "I think he's making a mistake." And as a kid, I was like, you got to be kidding me. Is this really happening right now? It's
crushing you at the moment, right?
Absolutely.
And he was only looking out the best for you.
Again,
he thought he was for the best for you.
Yeah,
he didn't know what would happen. He said, look, this is a path that's going to be easier for you.
Absolutely.
We want to protect our kids. We want to get them in the path to be successful.
Now. Right. I didn't see it then.
Then you're
Fortunately, my mom was there for support.
Yeah, there you go.
And I can only imagine what conversations they had after that, because obviously I'm one of 11. Mm-hmm. I had a few other siblings in college at the time. And I think she must have reminded them that, you might want to be a little more thankful that you don't have to pay for this kid to go to school.
Yeah. I mean, it's full right.
You might want to be a little thankful, a little more thankful. So, but he eventually, obviously, he came around. What
was it like the first year when you weren't playing and Thurman was playing? Was that tough for you?
I loved it.
You loved it?
No, I loved it, man.
Why?
Because going back to that thought I had as a high schooler, I want to go and play college football. So I was in Stillwater on campus, suiting up every Saturday, seeing the field on special teams, played more than I thought I would because, just through certain circumstances. I don't know how many carries I had my freshman year, but no one would have predicted I would see the field that much as a freshman. And so, and I'm there, as kind of, I wasn't really Thurman's backup because I don't know where I was on the depth chart, but I wasn't like immediately behind him.
Right.
So, but yeah, so I was exactly right where I wanted to be. And I was working diligently every day. I loved everything about it.
Now, a word from our sponsors. You were fulfilling a dream, something
Absolutely.
You wanted to do. That was your why. That was your passion you talked about earlier.
Yeah.
You were living it. Did you have to pinch yourself sometimes? Like, I can't believe I'm here doing this, what I love? Was that a feeling?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That was a feeling. But at the same time, it was more of a reality. College football was more of a reality check, I would say, because especially if you talk about 1986 time frame where there were no NCAA restrictions on how long you could practice, how many days you could practice. We had no days off, right? We had no days off. So even on Sunday, we'd have to come in and lift after the games and watch film and that kind of thing. So, and then Monday we'd start all over again. I mean, we literally there was no day that we did not practice. Mm-hmm. And so it was like I said before, it was a reality check in that it was a major time commitment. And some guys folded under it. And for me, again, it was difficult because it was so much different. I guess in my mind, I'd never even thought about how different it would be. Even the way the coaches talk to you was much different than in high school.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. And it didn't get much better in the NFL. I've heard some stories.
That's the thing, because a lot of these guys go back
over
and forth between college and NFL. Yeah. So they're talking to you like they're still in the NFL. Yeah. And so it's much different. But for me, it was just either time to embrace it or give up. And I remember a couple kids packing up their stuff saying, hey, I can't do this, you're definitely,
you definitely have the passion that you've shared. You were living what you wanted to, but it was harder than you thought it would be.
Absolutely. It was a lot more.
Made you appreciate it more though. Right?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, to me, it just pushed me, right? It pushed me, because I was always a worker. Mm-hmm. I was that kid in high school, jogging through my neighborhood. Didn't matter whether it was a Friday or Saturday night or whatever. I didn't go out a whole lot, and so I wanted to improve even as a younger kid and at a younger age, and even movies like Rocky. When you see Rocky running through the streets, I mean, that was that was one of those things to me that just kind of clicked. Like, oh, okay, I know this is a movie, but maybe that's what some guys do, and so that's one of the reasons why that I did the same thing. I would just go jogging, and doing whatever I could to, in my mind, improve. Yeah. So being pushed at O State, it helped me. I put on some weight, put on some strength, speed. I just sort of grew into myself, mm-hmm. and matured.
Things clicked.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was nothing that the weight coach would ask me to do that I wouldn't do, and try to do more. So yeah. I mean, it was right where I wanted to be as a freshman. I loved it because I knew, Thurman Thomas. I mean, the previous year he had been in the Heisman Trophy discussions, right? Mm-hmm. And so I knew that, okay, I'm sitting here watching a big time college player every day, so this is good.
Learning everything you could, watching him. And I know you guys are good friends and everything. You watched him do that. I'm sure that was, oh, wow, I can soak all this up and be better and see what his work ethic is like, see what he's going through. It kind of gave you the knowledge to step into that role?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. To see, because what's interesting about being in that setting, you see certain guys go off and play in the league, right? You just never know, like, what kind of player they're going to be in the NFL. But just to see certain guys that actually got drafted, some guys were sort of a surprise, but you knew Thurman was like headed there, right? He was well on his way. Yeah. And so for us, that was a big deal just to kind of be in the shadow.
Yeah, good. So you go in and you break all the records. I don't know if some of the fans and followers and viewers know this, but you were the first player to be drafted that wasn't a junior or senior. Is that correct? It was after your sophomore year? After
my junior year.
After your junior year.
I think I'm the first junior in the NFL.
That's what I meant, to be drafted into the NFL. NFL, right?
Yeah, NFL, yeah, because Herschel Walker.
Yep.
He was a junior, but he went into the USFL
and then came to the NFL.
Right, and I think Mike Rozier as well had been underclassmen, but they went to the USFL.
What was that like, being the first in the NFL to be drafted like that? I don't think people talk about that. It was kind of scary. Right.
Honestly, it was kind of scary because it was, I knew that it had sort of been a trend of juniors coming out, going into the other league. I didn't know how the NFL would react. And it involved sort of some legal issues or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so really for me, I think the timing was just right. I'm fortunate that they were receptive to it at that time.
You couldn't have had a better season. You broke every record. You couldn't have had a better season. The time was then. Then talking about in college, you broke all those records. Right. Yeah. That was the time to go.
Right.
You can't.
It was.
That's how that works.
Yeah, but there were still sort of a long established principles in place that you were coming up against.
And you broke down that wall, though. I mean, that's
with
a big
some help.
Deal.
I did. Yeah. And so that to answer your question, though, it was a little bit intimidating. Mm-hmm. Right. But obviously I was excited about the possibility and the chance of playing in the NFL.
So all the records, you won the Heisman. Is that one of your greatest accomplishments in football?
Oh, man. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, it really is, man. And it's
a big group that's a very prestigious group that you're with the Heisman.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so much changed after I won the Heisman, just in life. So many things changed because I feel like up to that point, I was still pretty much, I mean, some people knew me, but, when I won the Heisman, it was
like the lights came on and everyone knew who you were.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, wherever I went, I was kind of recognized, and especially like in Oklahoma, in places like that. So it changed a lot. But yes, I mean, again, being a lifelong fan of the game and watching all those Heisman Trophy ceremonies, whether you're talking about Tony Dorsett, right, or you're talking about Vinny Testaverde or Doug Flutie, or the list goes on and on. I mean, Herschel Walker, Marcus Allen.
Herschel's one of my favorite of all time, too.
Yeah, I mean, so being that kid, watching all those ceremonies, and then being there, hearing them call my name, that it was a shocker. Even though I had a fantastic year, I still was not sure, if I was going to win it, because Troy Aikman had a great year as well. And he was like the preseason favorite to win.
And he's a quarterback.
Right,
quarterbacks
absolutely.
Usually get it. That's how it usually is. How a quarterback's going to get it.
Right. And I didn't know. I don't know if Testaverde or Flutie was a previous year from him, but you're right. Yeah, a lot of quarterbacks have won it. But I was just glad, obviously, to be a part of the ceremony. I was thrilled that I'd had such a great year and that kind of thing, and just happened to be in Tokyo, Japan. Playing a game because, obviously schedules are made out years in advance. And so we had scheduled a game there on December 3rd of 1988.
Yep.
And so that's where I was. And so obviously, you're 12, 13 hours time difference. The game in Tokyo happened to be that same day.
Yep.
So it was just crazy, man. It was absolutely crazy. Just all the different drama going on. But yes, the Heisman was a very big deal. But at that point, I was still thinking I would still come back to school though.
Yeah. And look, I cannot relate to that whatsoever. However, in my business, there's a EY Entrepreneur of the Year award that I got nominated for. And I was like, that's not really a big deal. And then I saw how big a deal it was. And then I went and tried to compete to get it. And then when I didn't think I was going to win it, when I went to Atlanta and then they called my name, I was like, what? It was surreal to me. I can semi-relate, not the same thing, but winning an award in my industry that is really prestigious that I never thought I can win, even though I worked my butt off and I was just appreciative to be nominated. I can semi-relate to when you win something like that. It's like, wow, all that hard work feels like I did something great here. Right. Is that the kind of feeling? Right. You validate all those sleepless nights, all that hard work you put in, the jogging, the 7 days, working out, the learning, the watching the video, the busting your tail on the field. And the way you carried yourself throughout that was just amazing. I think that was another thing. People love your character equal as much as they love how good you are as a player. And I think that's a big deal.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's such a cherished memory, man, Heisman. And I think about, and I was fortunate too because I was a great player, but I think about the guys that I played with. Again, you're talking about late '80s, and so I had 5 fifth-year senior offensive linemen, right? So these guys who were experienced, they were older than me. All those guys were older than me, and not just that, but they loved the process and just the excitement, surrounding the Hall of Fame, the Heisman. And they knew early. Those guys knew early that we had something special. Mm-hmm. They wanted to go out and play for for me. In their words, they wanted to block. And they knew that we had a chance to do something historic. And so those are some of the things that I think about as well. Is that those guys, those linemen who really cherished that moment, and really saw early in that season that, oh no, we have a chance to really
do something great.
Right, absolutely. Where most of us were thinking, Thurman's gone to the pros, man. Now what are we going to do? They were thinking, no, I think we're going to be okay. So, but I think about those guys as well because obviously in your business also that it's such a great team game and you need people around you to make you great.
True.
And bring out the best in you.
That's exactly true.
So the same thing applies for me, especially for that year.
Now, a quick word from our sponsors. So you get into the NFL, Barry, and you're playing for the Lions. You're drafted 3rd. You're Rookie of the Year for Offensive Rookie of the Year, right, in '89? And almost win the rushing title. I remember that like yesterday reading it because it was Christian Okoye. And I always bring this up because I was a huge fan and I'm like, Barry's going to win this. And I think the Lions were up and there was an opportunity where you could have had the ball and got the title your rookie year. And you said, let the other guys run. Just touch base on that a little bit because that is your character that people don't understand. Well, they understand, but I like to share it even more. That they need to see this. I mean, this is a rookie who just won the Heisman that's in the NFL. That I think you were 10 yards away. Is that right?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, going into that last game in Atlanta, it had been a great year. I mean, for me individually, I mean, we didn't. I don't know how many games we won. We weren't going to the playoffs, but we were. That was our last game. I knew that I was. Me and Christian Okoye were right there, as the leading rushers in the league. And maybe I think he had played earlier that day or something like that.
That's what happened. I remember.
And had a good game. And so I needed however many yards to be able to get the rushing title.
It was 10. I remember.
No, but I mean for the game, for the whole game, I needed 100 and whatever yards for the game. And I ended up having a very good game that day. Several touchdowns. And late in the game, I learned that I'm only 10 yards away from the rushing title, but whatever the score was, the game was well out of hand. We were going to win. and it was the last game of the season. And it was really the time where you put in guys, your second string guys or whatever. And so they asked me, did I want to go back in? And, because I'm only 10 yards short of the rushing title. I was like, no, let the other guys play, man. I mean, it's been a great year. I don't feel like I need the rushing title to validate this season. It's already been a great season. I think later on I would learn that I was rookie of the year. I think that's voted on probably later, like in January or something like that, so I had already known that I had accomplished pretty much everything I wanted during that year other than going to the playoffs. And so that was really my mindset.
Selfishly, as a fan, I wanted you to win that. That would have been just great. Like rookie of the year wins the rushing title, but also as a fan to know that you said no.
Right.
Like let those guys come in. That's true teamwork. You were just talking about the offensive linemen. Like that's what people in the world need more of, especially with our athletes, right? To know that, look, team comes first and it's about us being unified together and doing things, not really selfish, stuff. I love Terrell Owens. And I love the comment. I love me some me. I kid around with my kids and say that because that's my favorite line. I love me some me. But in real world, I don't. Like I'm always I'm a little embarrassed or shy about stuff. And I don't want it to be just about me. I want it to be about our organization or my partners and our company and our employees. You are showing that on the field as a rookie who just won the Heisman Trophy, who gets drafted, third pick in the NFL. And you're right there. And the coach, everybody's like, hey, you want to go and do it? No, let those other guys play. That's big, man. I mean, and I know they've talked about it in other shows, but that's big time. That's showing the character of, look, it's not about me and myself, awards to be selfish. It's about giving other guys a shot, giving them an opportunity to shine and make the roster or get a contract or do things, right?
I agree. Absolutely. And I'm looking back, I'm even happier that I did it, because I wonder, had I gone in and won the rushing title that year, would people even talk about it as much? Because I always get a chance to talk about that particular incident. They
wouldn't have. It'd have been just one of the ones you won.
I figure it. Yeah, right. I almost think that it's almost a bigger deal now, looking back. And obviously, that wasn't in my master plan of any kind. But no, it's the kind of player I was. I love playing the game, and as far as chasing stats and things like that, it was just never really a part of who I was, and so, it is about the team and after it's the same way that a team, if the game is out of hand, will take a knee, right? I mean, there's no need to, obviously some coaches will run up the clock and some coaches will take a knee, right? Yeah. Right. So for me, show sportsmanship. And let the other guys in.
So you play in the NFL, go to a few playoff games, I know the 91 playoff game. It's the last win the Lions have had. I'm still a fan. It's hard. Still wishing we could win a couple more and maybe things will change. But let's talk about coaches. You had a handful of coaches, right? You've had players coaches and you've had some tough, hard knock, old school coaches. You would agree?
I would agree.
Both are very vital to the game. The Lions are in a situation now where they've got some coaching questions. If we win, I still think they've got a great shot just because the schedule looks a lot easier than it started.
Right, coming up, yes.
But It was a complete change from one coach who Caldwell was a player's coach and Patricia's more of an old school hard knock in your face coach, right? Not what that one's right or not right. But you lived through that with Wayne Fonts and Bobby Ross and some of the coaches you went through. As a player to transition, what advice could you give to even anybody? Because you transitioned from your old coach in high school to go. What advice could you give to young players out there, or athletes that have a coach change, or even an NFL player that might be out there? It's like, oh, what am I supposed to do now? That's a complete culture change of coaches. What advice, since you've been through that and you see it now, could you give?
I would say for me that you want to always keep it about the game, and about your performance and what you can do. And I think great coaches bring out the best in you. And everyone has different personality, and so, yeah, I mean, it takes sort of a nice mixture of things and personalities to make the world go round, and so, and it's certainly on the professional level of football that coaches come and go, players come and go. I mean, really, if you think about it, at no other level do coaches come and go the same way that they do in professional football. And so it's really something that you just have to understand that part about the business, and that it's really about what you do in your preparation every day, and appreciate the coaches for who they are and respect them for that, for their differences, because literally pretty much every one of them are really, really different, and there's different approaches to being successful, right? And that was, those, no greater example really from, Wayne Funch to Bobby Ross, two completely different personalities.
Good. I think that's great advice. And I, in being an entrepreneur running a business, we replace managers all the time, leaders all the time, just based on they want to move on or it's not a fit anymore. And so sometimes there's some culture shock of, well, we've got a players manager and now we've got a take no crap. This is what we're going to do type manager. I believe there's a need for both in my business. I don't play professional sports. There's a need for both in sports because some people need the hard knock to be pushed and some people need that attaboy pat on the butt to feel the accolades, right?
That's so true.
And there's no perfect coach.
Yeah, that's so true because I just assume, I assumed as a young player that everyone was as motivated as I was.
Yeah.
And
that's not the case, right?
Right. Yeah, I assume that. And so certainly you need some coaches to really bring it out of certain guys. Because my thinking always was, I shouldn't say always, but I learned that really what the coach demands of you, that's just the bare minimum. If you want to be great at it, that's the bare minimum. And so that was something that I learned. But for some players, they need to be pushed or prodded or whatever else. And so, yeah, I mean, those are one of the things that over time I realized that, not everybody really is here to try to be special, be great, or really to do their best necessarily, because there can be a lot of distractions, obviously. And for me, I was always determined to make sure that my performance was the biggest priority.
How hard is it, do you think it is to become a professional football player? I mean, to put in a few words, and I know that's a big question. How hard is it to make it?
Well, I think it depends. I think for some guys, they might say it was relatively easy. It may have been relatively easy. I don't know.
Some people are born with great talent,
right.
Like a whoa.
Well,
right?
and I'm sure I was as well. But I was always, like I said before, I was always, trying to get bigger, faster, taller even.
Yeah. Hey, me and you need to find the same person to make us taller, okay?
I assumed I need to be a lot taller. So I was always marking that spot on the wall, hoping I got to like 5'10" or 6 feet or whatever.
That's great. But special shoes, stand up a little bit taller, flat in the back. Yeah.
I never did that,
okay.
But I did see they have a surgery now that can make you taller, but that's the whole other.
They pull your legs out or something.
Right.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. I'm scared. But for some,
I think generally speaking, I think it involves a lot of sacrifice, and I think one of the things that I would point out is that if you were like me and you played as a kid, and you play in high school and in college, you realize that every year, like less and less of your like buddies play, right? And it can be kind of lonely almost, if that's really your goal, the NFL, and so which is fine, right? Because all of your buddies that you're playing with in high school, they're not going to make it to the NFL, even though a lot of them think they are, which is good, and a lot of them aren't going to go to college, and that's just sort of the reality of it. So I think there can be sort of that transition of just meeting new people and being in a new place and new faces and things like that. And then just, the grind part of it, to really be good at it. And that sort of thing, it requires tons of time, tons of, and I have to say also good fortune. There's some great athletes out there that may have gotten injured, other circumstances may have happened, lost interest, whatever else, had the wrong coach, playing out of position, so I would say, Yeah, I mean, a lot of the right things have to come together in my mind for one to end up there. When you talk about all the kids that start off playing the game and dreaming about being a professional football player, and so I think for me, I'm fortunate that I had the philosophy, like I mentioned before, that I just never got too far ahead of myself. I was always thinking about the moment, and I was never thinking too far down the line because I remember some of those kids that already had put themselves there.
It's easier to fail when you do that. When you're in high school and you're thinking, I got to be in the NFL, you're not looking at the moment. It's easier to fail. I have a motto, you can't take an elevator in life. You got to take the steps. It's one step at a time. And if you're already looking at the top, like if you're in high school and you're not even focused on getting into college to play, and you're bypassed at the NFL, that could hurt you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you didn't do that. You said you stayed in your moment. You were like, I've got to be the best right here.
Yes, at where I am at this moment, and so I think for me that those things certainly helped me. But to answer your question, I would say extremely, extremely difficult to be able to do it, and only a few make it. Mm-hmm. Obviously, when you start out, you don't know how hard it's going to be, and you don't know the challenges that you're going to have to face. But yes, it not very easy.
Good. Thank you. My son wanted me to ask that question. He said, make sure you ask Barry, how hard is it to get in the NFL? So I wanted to make sure I asked that question. But what that does is that brings me back to the listeners and followers.
But if you embrace, but another thing I learned too, though.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Small win, small step. You take a couple steps up and every now and then you fall down, but you just keep stepping up.
And you never know where you end up in a year or two down the road. Absolutely.
Would you say when you get to the top, it's still not enough because you still have to compete? Right?
Absolutely.
You still have to continue to grind. You have to, there is no top. You keep going, right? You agree?
I agree. Because I've always struggled when people ask me the question, when did you know you finally made it? And for me, if I think back, I don't know that I ever had that thought.
And that's what makes you so great because every day you're pushing
I don't know
to
I had
do
that
better.
thought because I was that guy that said, I want to continue to be great. I know how tough it is, the more success you've had, the more difficult it'll be because you're a target. Mm-hmm. You're a target, especially in the game that I played. And so that was always my mentality that what I did last game doesn't matter as much. What are you going to do next? Yep. And
nothing's ever good enough. You got to keep going, right?
Absolutely.
Don't settle.
And that's the word. That's the key thing is not selling because you see that happen, right? You see people become complacent. And for me, the joy was always, Jayson, just being young and being able to do those things, right? Yeah. And have been in the position to put in the work to be capable of doing those things, right? And so the only way to continue that was to continue to work at it. And figure, look, what is the weak part of my game? What can I do better? Those kinds of things. But yeah, you got to be careful about complacency and about rest on your laurels, especially in that game, especially as a running back. The way the position was played back then. I mean, you knew you were going to carry the ball 20, 25 times a game. Mm-hmm. It was a brutal physical game. And obviously, as fans watching it, it's entertainment, but out there on the field, it's serious business.
You
right?
get hurt.
You understand? It's serious business,
and it's how you provide for your family.
But you know what? For me, though, Jayson, the biggest fear was not being able to be great, not being able to play as well as I know I could. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. I mean, obviously, I was aware of like injury, right? And obviously, that was a very real part of it. But for me, that was really my biggest fear is not being able to perform up to my standards, and
you kept raising your own bar, which is why you kept pushing. You have to be successful in life. You have to. You can't just be this. The people will pass you.
And there are a lot of examples of guys who had great year or two and then never hear from them again. And that's their story, and it happens for whatever reason. But for me, I wanted to absolutely continue to push myself because for me, being in the NFL and being a running back in the NFL, I don't want to say it was like royalty, but when I think back in my mind, right, to those early running backs that I love watching, Some of them you may be familiar with. Some of them may not. Someone like Billy Sims or someone like a guy named Terry Metcalf. He played in the early 70s.
Terry Metcalf,
for the St. Louis Cardinals.
I've seen highlights of him. I wasn't old.
Right. Or a guy like Joe Washington or obviously Tony Dorsett or Greg Pruitt or the list goes on and on. Great running backs, Marcus Allens and Herschel Walkers and Eric Dickersons. So for me to be in, I got to mention Walter Payton. But for me to be in that position where those guys have been, playing at the highest level, playing my favorite position, I had to invest everything into it because it was like the greatest honor in life, right? And so I didn't want to let myself down, and I knew that it demanded a lot. But it wasn't just, okay, I'm playing NFL. No, I'm playing running back, the greatest position, and the one that I've always looked up to and wanted to play and, had dreamt about and whatever. So it was more to it than just, I'm playing running back in the NFL. It was a special, unique honor for me.
Yeah. And I think that fear of failure, not meeting your standards is a driver. It's one of your drivers that kept you going and raising the bar every day. And I think that, not only did you make the Hall of Fame, it's arguably the best running back in the NFL. People always go back and forth. Is it you? Is it Jim Brown? Is it Walter Payton? And I think, the running back position has changed so much. In my opinion, it's more of a versatile running back that gets a lot of passes, and you don't see the 2,000-yard or 1,800-yard rusher anymore that's, pounding and 20, 25, 30 times a game. They carry a 3 running back committee, which is fine. The game has changed.
Right.
I don't know in our lifetime if we're going to see it go back to the way it was. And you're right, that the hard-nosed football days all the way up to like late 90s, maybe early 2000s when it started to shift.
Right.
You're up there with the best of the best. So kudos to you on that. And you made the Hall of Fame, another point in your life, just like the Heisman, that was like, wow, is this surreal? Correct?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it just brings back so many memories of playing the game and individuals, who pushed me along and on the field or off the field. So, yeah, I mean, that's something that obviously is the pinnacle of the game. And you think about the people that came to watch you play, and the players you played against, the stadiums you played in, and just universal sort of respect, the highest respect and honor that I guess you could pay a player. So yeah, I mean that was a special, unique honor for me and for my family, for my dad to be able to witness that. I guess I could almost say that without winning a Super Bowl, maybe, I don't know that it replaces it.
Right. It would help. It's always
but
nice to have
it
that
definitely
ring.
helps to have had that amount of success in the game. And because, it's almost like your story lives on forever. And you kind of left your mark. It's like, the stamp of approval.
Everything you could possibly do, you
game.
Accomplished. Everything you possibly could do, you accomplished. And even you could have accomplished more, and you even stepped back. We talk about that. Like, hey, it's not about me. It's about the team and these guys getting a chance. That takes me to this part. Too many times, fans look at players as that's all you are. You're Barry Sanders, NFL legend, Hall of Famer, Heisman winner, icon of the Detroit Lions, right? You're the face of the franchise. But they forget that even though you're passionate, this was still your job. That was your career. That was this much of your life. You're a dad. You're in the community. You're doing things now as an ambassador with the Lions. There's a lot of things going on. Let's talk about post-football, if we can, right? It's because life's so much bigger than what we just do for our career. Even though that's part of you, you love it. I know what that's like. I run a business. It's like my inside. It's like my own child. It's what I did, and I'm here and I'm doing that. But there's so much of me that's still a dad. I'm a grandpa now. Like all these things going on. I joke and say I'm a gilf because I'm 40 and I got a granddaughter. But that means that's my joke. So going back to you being a dad, and there's so many other aspects. What is it like when you leave football? Because I've heard and read stories where a lot of players, that's all they know, and then they struggle. It's an identity issue. What was that for you to leave football and get into the real world again?
Well, I mean, it was tough to leave. I don't know that I'm back in the real world, because I have a pretty good life even now. But I mean,
but no, I know
what you're saying. Yeah. I know what you're saying. No, it was tough. It was tough leaving the game. I mean, I felt a little bit like I had lost a relative when I left because the game was so much a part of me. But I knew for me it was time to move on. But it definitely hurt. But I have to say this though. My last, I don't know, couple years, year 8, 9, I think there was a small part of me that said, I look forward to what's next. Mm-hmm. I embrace what's next, whatever that is. Because, when you're there every day, you realize how fragile it is. And although, yeah, I mean, Tom Brady, and Drew Brees, they're playing 20 years, but some guys only play 1-2 years. And some guys play a few months. Mm-hmm. So the game is very fragile in that sense. And nothing's given and guaranteed.
Right.
And so that year 8, 9 or so, I remember having that thought that, what, this has been great. I've done so many great things. But there's a small part of me that said, yeah, I do look forward to that. Mm-hmm. And so, but even when that time came, then it was still tough to pull myself away from the game. I went back and forth, and that sort of thing. And obviously we know how the story goes. And I retired after my 10th season. I also learned that I'm never going to find something like football. Mm-hmm. And I think that helped me as well, right? You're not just going to wake up someday. I may find something.
Golf, maybe?
I may find something. Well, I'm not as good at golf, but I enjoy golf. But I'm not going to find something like football in that the excitement, the thrill, the passion, the paychecks, mm-hmm. All those things. You're not necessarily going to find something like that. Maybe I will. I mean, I think that's the great thing in life. You never know what's around the corner. But I love my life in retirement. It's been fantastic, honestly. I mean, the cool stuff that I've had a chance to do, just being sort of like a brand ambassador, mm-hmm. doing a lot of great work with different companies. Mm-hmm. One of which being Power Home Solar. Yep. Yep.
And we love
Power
it
Home Solar. Absolutely. Yeah.
Having you on is great.
And some of them have been new relationships. Some of them have been sort of even long-standing relationships like Nike. Yep. And groups like that. And I've been in business. I part owner of a car dealership. Yep. In Oklahoma. I'm actually in the process of acquiring another car dealership in Oklahoma as well.
Congrats, yeah.
As we speak, and just all the and one of the greatest things I would say is just the time I've been able to spend with my sons mm-hmm. in retirement. Mm-hmm. Just being able to be there and see every step of their growth, and in these very crucial years. Mm-hmm. So that's been very precious to me because I was always around my dad. Mm-hmm. He took me to work with him at a very young age, and so to me, that's just I'm fortunate that I was able to do the same thing, to be around him like that, and hopefully it'll make a difference. Yeah.
Well, I've met your boys. You've got great kids. And I think that's the thing that a lot of fans don't realize, that, they think that the game, it defies the player, and really the player's defying the game. You're so much bigger outside after that. Your life is so much more than just that, even though everyone can enjoy in the records and the games and everything. But after that, that's where people, I think, sometimes forget. I was talking to Prater's a good friend of mine, and we were talking about, he was on an episode, and it's like, he's been a little nervous. What am I going to do after this? Right. Dude, the world's so much bigger than this. And, that's, absolutely. Seeing you with your sons, and you're doing a lot of things with different companies, including our company, and you got the car dealerships, and, we talked about going golfing, and you like golf. Like, there is so much more to Barry Sanders than just Lions legend, Hall of Fame. And that's what I think people need to understand, that for athletes, that this is what they love and this is what they're passionate about, but it is their job.
Right.
You know,
well, I have to say, I'm fortunate that fans do remember me for being number 20 with the Lions.
That's right, baby.
And I don't know that I ever do anything, like I said before, as exciting as that. So so that may be the most memorable thing that I do.
Yep.
But I'm okay with that.
Everybody compares themselves. You know, there's always this comparison. It's like this, like, are you like Tom Brady or Peyton? It's always, are you like Barry Sanders? Does that feel, I mean, I've heard it my whole life, and not just because I'm a fan, I hear it on TV. Does it feel good as a compliment that people want to compare themselves or other players to you?
It really is. And I feel, like I'm maybe getting too much credit, because I there's so many guys that I like I've mentioned already that I imitated in some way or other, or that had an impression on me or influence on me.
Man, I think you made. So
now they're giving me credit for a lot of that stuff. But
I don't know, man. I remember watching when NFL show would come on with Chris Berman, and it was, there goes Barry, the 30, the 40, the fit. Like that was the giddy up right there. Your highlights were always the best watched thing. And I'm not saying that because I'm biased, I'm a Lions fan. That was the best thing to watch back in 89, 90, 91, 90. I mean, that's what it was on his show. I think that helped propel ESPN the way it was, because a lot of the games didn't have the flashy of, you're going to get all 11 players to miss before you get in the end zone. That's pretty remarkable. Right?
No, I take pride in that. Like I said, I love being a running back in the NFL and the challenge. Yeah. The challenge of it. And, just sitting back there, before the snap, not knowing what's going to happen, knowing that you're the target, and being able to create some of those runs. I mean, to me, there was a certain art to it. And like I said, I wanted to uphold, that standard of, when you watch someone, or at least for me anyways, when I watch guys like Walter Payton run with the ball, and he ran with so much heart and inspiration and determination, and it really meant something to him, and I wanted to be the same way. I'm fortunate that I had the same or similar impact on fans, because I remember being a fan and being inspired in that same way. And so, that's one of the greatest honors for me. And that's why things like you were asking me, like the Hall of Fame, means so much, because, so many fans that, people come up to me all the time and, they say stuff like, man, I rooted against you when you played, but I certainly enjoy coming out to watch you play against my Bears or Packers or whatever else, and that kind of thing. So, no, that's for me, that's one of the highest compliments I could receive.
Good. Well, hey, thank you for coming on the show. I want the fans and listeners to understand that, look, everything's one step at a time. You explained it very well, that don't, be in the moment. Don't over set your goals to where you can fail. We appreciate watching you for the 10 years you played, Barry. We appreciate what you're doing here in the community in Detroit. Appreciate your friendship and the partnership at Power Home. Make sure you follow at Barry Sanders on Twitter, and where else can they find you? On Instagram, what is it? It's Barry Sanders on Instagram as well?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Those two, yep.
So check us out, True Underdog. That's a wrap here with the icon, the legend, Barry Sanders. And that concludes another episode here on True Underdog. If you're interested in hearing more, make sure you subscribe at iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the YouTube channel. You can always visit TrueUnderdog.com, subscribe to all of them. Make sure you check out our newest episodes coming out on Mondays and Thursdays. True Underdog, baby. Bam!